for the few of you who've asked how to make fondant on your own. Thought I would actually demonstrate this one on video today. All you need is a bag of mini marshmallows, a bag of confectioner's sugar, some Crisco, and a good clean working space. So the first thing that you do is you just melt your marshmallows. You can do it in the microwave or over a double boiler or whatever is easiest for you. So I'm going to microwave. And I've also got a cake cooking, so when that comes out, don't mind me. Okay, when I get my space ready, I treat the confectioner's sugar like flour. And I clean this really well. Make sure there's no water on here because you don't want it to stick. But I just use this confectioner's sugar to kind of make like a dusted area to start with. This is an incredibly messy venture, but the benefits are that it's cheaper. If you buy a case of fondant, it's $10, $15, $20 depending on how much you want, and then on top of that it doesn't taste as good. And fondant is really just for decoration anyway. I mean, most people don't eat it, but this kind really just tastes like a marshmallow, and so at the very least the kids like the little pieces that you decorate with, and your guests won't feel like they have to peel it off to eat the cake. So I'm just microwaving marshmallows. That was 1 minute, and it's basically done. Looks good. Okay. Now the Crisco I use throughout the whole process, but at the very beginning, you want to just get like a little bit on your hands to keep everything from sticking to your hands. There's really no way for it to not stick, but at the very least, you can grease your hands and kind of prevent major buildup. So we're going to start with our confectioner's sugar, and I usually kind of do like a little bit at a time. So there's like half of the confectioner's sugar, and this is just melted marshmallow. That's all it is. You're probably getting an idea of how messy this is now. So there's half or so, and then literally all it is you mixing. There's no pretty way to do this. I've tried doing it where you just stir in the bowl, but it doesn't really work and you can't get it combined as well. So be prepared to have your hands messy for a little while. I usually try to do this when kids are not around for obvious reasons, but if there's like something that happens and they need you right away, it takes forever to like clear off your hands and keep this from getting contaminated with children things. So you're just mixing, and if you get to a place where your hands are too caked up, that happens, like where you can't mix because they're just full of stuff, you can stop and get some more Crisco and kind of rub it in. Where did I drop that? Don't worry, it'll taste fine. And then just keep mixing. So mix. Marshmallows. If you kind of keep the marshmallows covered with the powdered sugar, it helps your hands not to stick to it as badly. But again, this is really it. It takes a little while. So I'm probably going to speed through this part of the video, or edit out all of the mixing, but you're getting the idea. All it is mixing. And one thing, too, to remember, my cake's about to beep, but that's when this is done, it hardens really quickly. So you're going to want to have like some saran wrap around to wrap it up. this amount of fondant that I'm making probably isn't enough to cover an entire cake, but I usually don't do that anyway, just because you can get icing smooth enough that it looks just as good as fondant and it tastes a whole lot better, and it's not as tedious, obviously. So I usually just use this for decoration, just for little pieces on the cake, instead of covering it entirely. Of course. So, we're going to pause this, wash my hands, take these out the door. Package. I know y'all wanted to know. Alright. And then before, if you've washed your hands, you want to just get more Crisco back on again. Now at any point that you feel like your fondant is too thick, you can actually add like little drops of water. I would not recommend doing that until you're like totally convinced that you're done mixing, because that water, just a little tiny bit, makes it so sticky and really hard to like get back to a good consistency. So it's getting stickier as we keep working it. And actually, I prefer using more Crisco in here to like keep it from being so hard and sticky. The Crisco kind of just softens it and makes it easier to pull and pick up more confectioner sugar as well. I'm going to move some of this confectioner sugar because I'm going to actually knead this almost like bread at this point. Now obviously this is almost just like an eyeball situation. If you want this to be more, you just add more marshmallow and more confectioner sugar. But I'm only using this again for just little decorations on my cake tomorrow, so I'm not, this is plenty. And it's, I mean, you gotta think of it like Play-Doh. I mean, just this little tiny piece will make a flower on a cake. So I don't need as much, which is another reason why it's just better to make it, because then you're not spending 15 or 20 bucks on pre-made fondant that you don't even really use. So it's pretty much done. Fondant, marshmallows and confectioner sugar, that's all it is. And literally, fondant is the easiest thing to master for decorations because it literally is just like Play-Doh. I mean, you lay it flat like that, roll it, cut out shapes, however you want to do it, and it hardens quickly. This homemade stuff actually hardens a little faster even than the store-bought stuff. So that works to your advantage if you're making something and you want it to dry so that it's easier to pick up and move to the cake. And I usually just take like a little piece of royal icing and put it on the back, like almost like glue, to paste it onto the cake. Or you can immediately after you're decorating, put it on the cake, and then it's still sort of wet, or at least enough to stick to the cake. And just keep it covered while you're working with it. If you pull a piece off, cover the rest of it up. And to dye it, I guess we should do that. Let me go get my dye. Green here, and I'll just do a little piece. But you also want to use the Crisco for the dye because it can get on your hands, and then it ends up just dyeing your hands and not the fondant. So the Crisco kind of helps keep it off your hands and slide back onto the fondant. So you don't need much, especially if you're using this gel type of food coloring, just Americolor. And I mean, that's way more than I need, really. But you're just going to kind of work it into the fondant, just like you kneaded the fondant together. And as the dye kind of comes to the surface, and if it's getting on your hands, just add more Crisco. And we're just mixing, 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 pulling it all apart. It starts to marble a little bit. There's really no secret, it's just mixing it together. Until it's the color that you want. And it's just like any other icing. I mean, if you went too dark, add more fondant. If you went too light, add more color. So, you get the idea. So, that's how you make your own fondant for very cheap, and it tastes better.